We're going to talk this afternoon about decision making. And I was fortunate about 5 or 6 years ago to work on this project down at Quantico on decision making using paper-based TDGs, sand tables, other techniques you've been familiar with. And they brought in a bunch of retired generals and a bunch of civilians to talk about how Marines make decisions. Some of it was school stuff and some of it was experience stuff. But we all know that somewhere in Iraq or somewhere on the way back from Iraq, there's some sergeant who was in a building one afternoon on the far side of the canal, and the guy came running in from the tank unit and said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Let's do this." He talked to his men, he talked to the tanker, the guy ran out the door, he got in the radio, and stuff started happening. And the biggest thing we found during the experiments with the warfighting lab was that guys make these decisions all the time, and it's not recorded very well in any of our books. How did it happen? What do you mean? The guy's been in for 6 or 7 years, he knows what he's doing, and he just told them what to do. And so the most important skill of a combat leader is not really well understood. So we tried to put some stuff together, tried to put some tools together to increase the ability of folks to make decisions. So this afternoon we're going to talk about decision making, some of the techniques that are good for facilitating decision making training. Not how to do it as a Marine, but how to do it as an instructor, and how to get the most out of the folks you're instructing so that they themselves learn the most they can possibly learn about decision making. So I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then hopefully we'll run 2 separate simulations, Gunny, if that's all right with you.
Yes, sir.
And then the simulations themselves will serve as a prac app, and we'll use some of the techniques we talked about. If you've been around for more than 2 years in the Marine Corps, you've probably seen a ton of this stuff. All I'm going to do is present it in some formalized way that either will approve or disapprove techniques you may have seen done. So the first thing up there is combat decision making is the skill of the combat leader. We spend a ton of time on stuff that doesn't have to do with it, but that's what real combat leaders need to do. It's a learned skill. How many fly balls have you caught, Sergeant Triplett? Quite a few. Guys who play baseball catch 1,000 fly balls, correct? And how many decisions have you made in combat?
No, sir.
Yeah. In training for combat?
Lots.
Lots. As many as you've caught fly balls? Probably not, right? And we're just trying to balance that out because we need to simulate this decision making to give you the experience so you're as good at catching fly balls as you are at what you're supposed to be good at. Does that make sense? And decision making training augments real world experience. Some people get kind of hinky with this simulation stuff. They say, hey, it's a simulation, it's not real. Correct. But a simulation is better than nothing. It augments field training, and obviously if you make one key combat decision in your whole entire career, that's a good thing. You need 6,000 decisions before that to get there. You want to make sure you replicate that in as many manners as possible. So the first thing that they got from some of these experts who look at decision making in academia, study policemen, study doctors, is that experts aren't taught to be experts. You don't teach them to think like an expert, you teach them to learn like an expert. Individuals learn to make themselves experts. If you're going to be expert at anything, you're going to teach yourself. You may have teachers, but the teachers teach you how to suck in more knowledge. So when you guys are facilitating for squad leaders, for others, you want to teach them to learn like experts. Hey, Devil Dog, once you leave me, here's what you need to do to suck in more information. Every time you're in the field, every time you do this, when you go back to your own units, you want to encourage that because they learn like experts. And then the last, second point is they build experience using deliberate practice. Now, I was reading the other day about Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods has hit a lot of golf balls, probably, right? If you went out and hit a golf ball 55,000 times, or however many Tiger Woods says he hit, would you be the same as him? Now, you might say, well, there's a problem with natural skill. All right, fine. On the other hand, he was 4 years old. His dad's coaching him. What's coaching? It's telling the learner what he needs to work on, telling him what he just did that should be corrected, and giving him some guidance. Try something different. Tiger Woods' father hires a golf pro. Tiger Woods, 7 years old. What's the golf pro telling Tiger Woods? Okay, and the next one, focus on your wrist, your swing, the ball, the weather, all this kind of stuff. So you build experience using not just practice, but deliberate practice. And that's the same as a baseball coach saying, just today we're just going to do double plays. What are we going to do? Double plays. Deliberate practice is very tailored, specific practice at a specific portion of the skill that you're working on. Peers, good coaches offer advice, focused repetition, not just repetition 55 golf balls. I could whack all day long at some golf thing, and I'm not going to equal what Tiger Woods does. After-action review is one of the things the Marine Corps is bought into, correct? It's not worth training unless you discuss it afterwards. And what do we discuss? Was that good? Was it bad? And the worst thing sometimes with after-action review is people say, anybody any comments? Nothing. Whereas a good facilitator, which you men, you Marines are, you pull the answers out of the Marines. Hey, was that perfect? Did you make perfect decisions? No, sir. Why not? And you pull it out of them. You don't want to just say, anybody any comments? All right, let's get out of here. You want to pull these things out of them because you need an after-action review, and that drives them to more goal-directed practice. Some things work out well. That worked really well on the indirect fire. Indirect fire was locked on. Well, tomorrow we're not going to waste any time on indirect fire like we did last week. Let's focus on that which was sloppy and gooned up. So experts are not taught, they teach themselves. And that's a big insight that I didn't realize beforehand. All right, so decision-making training for leaders in the Marine Corps. You guys deal with squad leaders. Everyone deals with leaders at some level. Decision-making training, you practice and communicate tactical decisions. When I was first commissioned, they gave us 1 million TDGs. We've all done TDGs, right? Tactical decision games. Piece of paper with a simulation, and you say, okay, what are you going to do? I'm going to go around the left flank, I'll put the machine guns here, and I'll go down, right down the river draw. Any questions? And then they give you usually a twist, correct? All right, you're down the river draw, and Henderson opens fire on the right flank before you're ready. Oh, geez. And you have to make another decision. And you get 2 or 3 decisions out of a nice piece of paper. And if a good guy is facilitating it, you suck, 8 or 10 good things out of that one piece of paper. And for those you've done in class, there's usually a big map on the screen. Do the same thing, and you point to different folks, correct? TDGs, paper or whiteboard, sand table exercises, simulations, which we're going to talk about today, field exercise and combat. That to me is like a big pyramid. You can do 60,000 repetitions on paper. I would argue that the simulations, you can do 120,000. Why? Because it saves you an awful lot of time. And unlike a TDG that runs once with maybe one twist to it or one, gotcha, what happens on the simulation? It keeps running, and the enemy does something different, and so it's like a continuing series of TDGs. Every 4 minutes, you're faced with a different situation because you're fighting, ideally, a conscious enemy. The other guy does something, and you're like, man, that changes things. And then if you add on the complexity of playing 2 or 4 people, what's the biggest challenge when you're playing with multiple people on a team? Yeah, doesn't get it. Hey, wake up over there. I want to do this. You're doing this. That's a communications challenge, which again, the Marine Corps is half our problem, correct? But infantry is a team sport. So we need to focus on playing it as a team. And the communications aspect is a key part of using the simulations. Most times when I see TDGs done, you brief a class or a number of Marines, but then one guy stands up. Hey, you're the sergeant, squad leader, you're the staff sergeant, platoon commander, whatever. He makes the talk. Everyone else goes, yeah, I do that too. But in real life, they wouldn't be. It would be all gooned up because of the communications challenge. So experience on a simulated battlefield gets back to you're allowed to make 10,000 decisions here, 60 out in the field, and eventually 1 in combat. 1 or 6 or whatever, one day's key decision making is. All right. This applies to all different types of simulations, as you were, all different decision making training. This applies to TDGs, simulations, field training. The biggest mistake I've seen when people facilitate a TDG or a decision making exercise is they pick the guy who's going to lead the thing before they start. All right, Corporal Henderson, this is yours. Everyone listen up. And then they read off the orientation. You're here on the map. This is the situation with the enemy, what we believe to be. You got any questions, Corporal? You're the platoon commander for this squad, you're up for this platoon, blah, blah, blah. You give them the input, and the corporal sits there, and everyone else goes, whew, man, good thing it's not me. A better technique is to say, all right, gents, all of you are potentially going to be the leader here. What are you doing there? You're multiplying the potential decisions that these guys have to make. You want to make sure every guy has enriched decision-making experience. So when there's 10 students, all right, stand by, here's the orientation. You don't pick the guy till after the next step. Every man has an order. Even if it's just an index card where he says, geez, if I was in charge, I guess I'd, and he writes out what he's done. At that point, you pick a guy. All right, triplet, let me see your order. He stands up and he gives it to the group. Another good technique. Don't let the guy giving the order fake it by saying, well, you know, if we had some more time, we'd probably do this. I didn't really get to do much on my piece of paper, but I was thinking the left thing looks like a good place. Hey, pal, we are in the building. The guys are across the stream bed. What are we doing right now? And a good way to do that is to assign subordinates. Machine gunners, first squad, second squad, talk. Well, you know, the first thing I do, don't tell me what you do, just do it. And then he gets the Academy Award for acting like a real combat leader in real combat. He says, all right, here we go, gents. Base of fire is established here. First squad, you're the main effort. I want you to go around the left flank, take them down behind the building. I'm going to stay here. Any questions? And then what does he ask? He asks for a brief back. Corporal Anderson, what are you doing? I didn't get it. What do you want me to do? Right here. You're going to be right here. Is that real? Of course it is. Just like real life. Corporal Henderson doesn't get it because he never gets it. You use the brief back technique in field exercises, in live exercises. Use it for the TDG. You want to replicate with the orientation and the order real life. Don't let these guys slide by saying, well, it's a difficult problem. And, you know, Henderson and I were sitting together. We thought maybe that grass on the west side would be a good approach. That's letting the guys slide by. Make them give an order. Hey, you got 5 minutes to give an order right now. And if he starts waffling, bang, you're done. Anderson, give me your order. Ah. And that guy's like, holy cow. But every guy had written an order. And if you have them write it down, you can collect them all up at the end. It just serves to mean that they all answered the question. And what did you do for them? You've now increased the decisions that each man had to make, even though only Corporal Anderson executes his order. Discussion. I put the after the exercise is complete because that's kind of important. A lot of times you see a decision-making exercise given, and they say, all right, who's going to give the order? Well, you know, that left road, I'd never go down that road on the left. And that building 4, that would be a crazy place to go. Why are we talking about the situation right now? You're losing the opportunity to talk about it before everyone goes off. You want to make sure these guys put their pride in the line. Hey, this is my order. This is what I would say. And hold all discussion until after the order arises. Again, that gives all 10 members a chance to write their order without having, you know, the loudmouth at the end of the room to skew their thinking. Wow, those buildings on the north side, don't use those buildings on the north side, that looks bad. You want to make sure the discussion occurs after Corporal Henderson has given his order, or after you've given that little twist, and he comes back and says, all right, then I do this. All right, now does anybody have any comments? And that's when everyone should say, hold it, that's crazy going on the left side, or why'd you think that? What happens when? And you make sure the discussion happens after the order is given. Does that make sense, gentlemen? Have you seen TDGs run poorly as well as good? I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
So you can see, I mean, there's a rainbow of TDG techniques. I'm just throwing out that these are probably a better way to maximize the decision making that these guys get. And everyone's seen paper TDGs, correct? And Gunny, did you do the paper TDGs in the curriculum here before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what we're looking at is adding computer TDGs to augment the paper TDGs.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you 5 quick techniques, advanced techniques, above and beyond the simple how to facilitate. And these are kind of interesting because some of these were recommended, obviously like Commander's Intent by the Marine Corps. Others are more academic insight on how decision making is done. 3 of them are pre-TDG, meaning before you start, you can use this technique. One of them is very interesting. You can do it during the TDG, and we should probably try it today because it's an interesting exercise. And then, of course, the last one is just insights on the best way to conduct a critique. So the first one there is called goal clarification. Hey, today's exercise, gents, is just about movement techniques. Well, what about machine guns? Fine, you're going to use machine guns, but you're going to use them well or not well, but we want to focus on movement techniques. And what it does for you as a facilitator, of course, is while you're watching it, he might goon up the machine guns, he might goon up the order, he might goon up a lot of things, and you can make notes on that. But you really want to make notes on what did he do for the movement techniques, because that was the purpose of the exercise. And as instructors you're familiar with, hey, this period of instruction today is supposed to focus on something. The problem as I see some of these simulations is sometimes people get so excited about the big fight that they lose their focus on what the heck the training's all about. So the first thing you say is, hey, the goal of today's exercise is this. And you might pull in, last week when we did it, we identified this as a weakness. All right, Sergeant Triplett, you had that exercise where you did this, this, and this. We're going to revisit that by focusing on that today. And that's the whole idea. Identify weak trends from previous exercises. So in a school setting, that's difficult to do because you usually have a stepwise progression. And then focus the discussion and critique. After you're done talking about it, do you talk about the crazy thing you did with machine guns? You just give it one sentence. Hey, the machine gun behind the hill works fine on the left flank, but didn't work at all on the right flank. Let's really talk about what we wanted to talk about, which is how you moved your forces forward and you got schwacked because they were all exposed simultaneously. Let's work on clear understood orders, whatever it is. Your discussion then focuses on what you want to do. That is not a sophisticated idea. That just is something that you want to make sure every exercise has. Why? Because to enrich every man's experience, he needs to know, what should I focus on? If I only have 5 minutes to write an order, make sure you get the part right. The part that you focus on should be the part that the instructor wants to learn. All right, this is an interesting one. Sergeant Triplett gives his plan. And then he gets briefbacks from his subordinates. Any questions there, Henderson? I'm good. I'll be right behind you on the left. Mortars, check. We're going to hit them before with smoke. Check. Everyone's good. Before you kick it off, anybody any last questions? No. Before you kick it off, nobody's critical of the plan. And that's a human nature thing. Why is no one critical of the plan? Well, because Sergeant Triplett just put his pride in the line. He said, hey, this is my plan. And it says, hey, it'll work. I think it'll work. Just call a timeout. Make the Marines find the weaknesses in the plan. And the way you do this without embarrassing Sergeant Triplett is you tell Sergeant Triplett, your plan completely failed. We're now 1 hour down the road, and we're talking about it, and we're all flustered. Whew, man, that went in the toilet. That was the worst exercise possible. Tell me one reason why it was bad. Tell me a second reason why it was bad. Tell me a third reason why it was bad. And now you're putting the onus on the individual to come up with reasons. Well, you know, I told Sergeant Triplett it would work, but I knew the whole time that separating us in 6 different units like that and trying to have us all coordinate in the far side, that would never work. That's why it failed. And again, if you can imagine yourself, just like in the movies, 1 hour ahead, 20 minutes ahead, going, why did it fail? You give the men the incentive to come up with ideas. And then Sergeant Triplett goes, you know what? I like my plan. I'm going to stick with it. Okay, that's his decision. That's valid. On the other hand, if someone comes up with a good point, you know, I really didn't think the signals were going to work because we're so far apart, or whatever the comment is, then what does Sergeant Triplett say? Fine, that's a good point. Excellent point. Let's do it like this. And all you're doing is making small mods to his order, his plan. The men then serve to help the leader. And if you did it the opposite way by saying, anybody got any problems with that? What's the average Marine Corps response? Can do, sir. We're all with you. In the back of your head, you're going, man, this is a crazy idea. All you're doing is forcing them to give you the honest truth. It failed. It failed. I screwed up. Tell me why I screwed up. You tell me why I screwed up. You tell me why I screwed up. And even if it's something simple like, well, you know, the enemy fired first. That's good. That's good. If the enemy fires first, our whole plan goes in the toilet. You need to think about those things to make your plans more robust. And then adjust the plan to address weaknesses. Any question on that? That's called a pre-mortem. Where does that come from, Sergeant Triplett? Kind of a play on words. On the crime shows, they have a post-mortem. What's a post-mortem? After the body is dead, I think is the Latin, right? And the guy who does the post-mortem figures out why a guy died. Well, it doesn't do you much good after you're dead. It does everyone else good, but it doesn't do you much good, right, Sarah, right? Pre-mortem means you're figuring out why you died before you die. It's a pre-mortem. All right, commander's intent is something that the Marine Corps bought into more than 10, 12 years ago. Some concept of what the end picture is. And all this is a confirmation of commander's intent. Sometimes you hear a guy spit something out, everyone nods like a little dummy in the back of the window, right? And then later when you go, all right, what if this happened? Oh, geez, I don't know. Well, were you listening when I gave my... Yeah, I did, but obviously it didn't stick. Commander's intent, all it does is give the guy a vision of the future. I want to seize that hill in order to control the valley below. Sound right? When we get up in the hill, if it's all fogged in, what are you going to do? You don't know. But if he wants to control the valley below, you get off the damn hill because it's fogged in. And you move down the slope until you can see the valley. Giving the guy a for instance pimps him for information. Did he understand my intent? If he doesn't, you restate your intent. Gents, we're going to seize the hill in order to control the valley below, to prevent enemy reinforcements, whatever it is. And you restate it. A visualization of the future is only good if everyone shares the same vision. Because why? Because in combat, things are chaotic. It's unpredictable. You may not be there to tell Sergeant Wright what to do at that moment in time. What do you give him before he leaves? You give him your intent. And if it's done well, and we've talked about it again for more than 10, 12 years, and there's still people kind of shaking this whole concept, right? My final desired effect. We have all different language techniques. There's guys arguing about how to do it. You allow subordinates initiative. We talk a lot about subordinates initiative, judgment, and ability to meet changes, correct? But when you hear an intent like, hey, my intent is to seize the damn hill, well, that's the mission. Why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? If you're not sharing it with your subordinates, you're not helping them out at all. Don't worry about it. I'll be there. I'll be on the top of the hill. I'll just tell those guys where to go. That's not the best answer, is it? Because we all know that you probably won't be there. There's 1,000 things that can happen. If you think you can conceive of all those things that are going to happen, then you're a little overconfident and a little underexperienced. The in order to phrase describes the end state, and then the subordinates can brief back your intent. What's your intent? Sir, your intent is to have lunch before noontime. Excellent. That's an excellent restatement of my intent. And if they understand it during the brief back process, what do you get? You get good communications going on. And then I already gave an example of what if. What if we do this? Geez, I don't know, sir. What do you mean you don't know? I was crystal clear about what I wanted to have happen. Well, obviously you're not crystal clear if the guy doesn't answer the what if questions correctly. Any question on that? Those are all done before you kick off the TDG. All right, you're the platoon commander for 1st Platoon. You have 3 squads and the company mortars. Situation is as follows. Scattered enemy units, somewhere in the vicinity of 20 soldiers, remain in the vicinity of the airfield. They may have a heavy machine gun, a mortar, or an anti-aircraft missile with them. That could threaten the helicopters that are planned to land at this airfield. The remainder of the battalion is going to fly into the airfield once the anti-aircraft threat is reduced in order to stage for follow-on operations. I think the enemy will avoid contact with us and wait to target the helicopters. The mission for Alpha Company is to clear the area around the airfield in order to prevent enemy interference with air operations. I say again, the mission is Alpha Company clears the area around the airfield in order to prevent enemy interference with air operations. Execution. 1 platoon is going to block the northern access road, shown here on the map, off the screen on the simulation. 3rd platoon is going to block the access road from the north. 2 platoons will clear, one on the west and one on the east, from north to south. And the grid square is oriented as you see on the map. Rotary and CAS is on call. We have no artillery in range of our unit right now. Again, mortars are going to travel with 1st Platoon. Tasks. 1st Platoon, that's you. 1st Platoon is my main effort. You will clear the west side of the airfield in order to prevent enemy interference with air operations. You will clear the west side of the airfield in order to prevent enemy interference with air ops. 2nd Platoon will clear the east side in order to prevent enemy interference with air ops. And 3rd Platoon will block the northern approach to the airfield in order to prevent an enemy counterattack. Mortars are traveling with 1st Platoon, and their priority of fire is to the main effort, which is 1st Platoon. As 1st Platoon Commander, do you have any questions? All right, time is 13:44. At 13:50, I'll select one of you to be the platoon commander and deliver his order. Use your index card to write the platoon order. Will be your mortar team leader.
Okay, sir. All right. This is what my plan was. As stated, mission is as stated in the company commander's order. We're going to clear the airfield in order to facilitate us using it as a loading platform for follow-on operations. All right. My plan was with 1st squad, 2nd squad. We're going to do a series of successive bounds. We were using the foliage and terrain to clear the west side of the airfield. I think that was my mission one. That's the east side or the west side? West side. The west side of the airfield. All right, we're going to do that by having 3rd squad and the mortar section in reserve, and they're going to follow in trace of 1st and 2nd squad as they do the successive bounds. Hopefully, we'll fix the enemy with our bounds. 1st or 2nd squad, whoever comes in contact, will fix the enemy in place. If we have to, my suspicion is that they're inside that building. It's a 2-story building. That way they can see out over the terrain. That we'll fix them with fire, and we'll have 3rd squad come up as a reserve and go into a mount type scenario, and we clear them out of that building. That's what the plan is. There you go. That's your mortar section you got shooting up there?
You're right.
Okay, good to go.
What is that building?
Sweet. Where you at?
Now, if you don't get, if that's not your mortar section, it's not an indirect weapon, you gotta have a green line to shoot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is called the situational awareness calibration. What's calibration mean? Fine tuning. And what it's really good for is for the gunny to figure out what his folks know. So let's not share what you think right now until after we discuss it. Only take 5 seconds, all right? What's the goal of the unit? What are we trying to do right now? Write it down. Don't tell me. Write it down. Number 2, what are you doing in support of that goal? Number 3, what's your biggest concern right now? Doesn't have to be an enemy. It could be any situational thing. What's your biggest concern right now? What's the biggest issue that you see affects your unit? Number 4, what's the biggest threat right now? What's the current threat facing your unit right now? Last question. 20 minutes from now, what's the situation? Enemy, friendly, you can describe it any different ways, but where are we going to be in 20 minutes from now, right now? This technique, it's no rocket science, right? Technique is just to see if someone said something way out there, it's a little indicator for you, holy cow, I shouldn't have left my guys out there. But because the gunny's been very proactive, well, hey, what are you guys seeing, what are you guys seeing? And you're communicating, you get better situational awareness than you might otherwise have, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions on that technique? No, sir. All right, hit go. You guys ready?
Why need to get back up? This is already your last. He's coming.
Well, you guys can throw in comments as well, but obviously the primary learning is for the team that took the order, that fought the good fight, all right? So we'll start with the gunny. Gunny, what was the hardest decision initially?
My hardest decision was whether or not I wanted to go inside that building. I know my order said the west side of the building, and that's what I wanted to do primarily, was clear the west side. Because they might have had someone else planning to go inside. They could have had a follow-on force or something like that. Something like that planned to go and actually take the building.
So what information would you have wanted to help you with that decision?
Enemy situation. I didn't get an enemy sit rep at all. You know, if I'd known that there were actual people inside the building, then I would have put my focus on that building.
In my my comment is that how much information do we usually have on enemy? You know, within the grid square, I thought was, hey, there's 20 knuckleheads in the grid square. And we're probably not going to have down to the last nap.
Right,
So, I mean, that was tough. Sharon, what was the toughest decision you had to make?
Just whether or not to go across the road, the northern tip of the airport, building number 1. I wanted to go across that road, and get in that building, but I couldn't. Until it started talking now.
All right. Any comments on your plan? Was it a good plan?
Of course, I think my plan was great. Did it work? That's the question. But I'm going to have to try to kind of side with the sergeant over here and saying that maybe we should attack from the building down in order to clear that side. Might have been a better plan to do that.
Okay.
But being only a platoon, I know that I don't want to do a mount scenario with just a platoon. Because that way, if I secure something, I got to be able to hold it. And by the time I get to the end of that terminal building, I'm not going to have enough men for that.
So how would you have done it differently?
I would have called for more help. I would have actually stopped, hey, CO, sir, hey, this ain't working. I need more people here. We got enemy in the building. I need to clear this building.
Okay. What was the biggest lesson learned in moving across that open area? Gunny?
Did we have to get in the building right away? Did we have to? Probably not. They said attack from the west, and we were actually attacking northwest.
No, I said clear the west side.
Clear the
Attack
west
from
side,
north to south.
right, but we were doing an attack from, pretty much from the north. We
Right.
could have came further south and came over, so did we have to get in the building right away? Probably not.
The only issue is, could you have moved farther off to the side?
No, sir. We was all the way to our left limit.
Plus, I think the machine guns probably still would have controlled some dirt even if you moved out in that direction. So it's kind of a sticking point. It kind of like sucks you in to where they're going, right? You said if you had done it differently, you would have gone into the building
Yes, sir.
if you had reinforcements.
Even if without, I would have started from the further east.
Okay.
And attacked down.
And moved through the buildings. So the buildings, when you first looked at the map, what did you think about the terrain? What was the
Well, I
critical
thought
terrain?
those trees and shrubbery over there would provide cover and concealment from us. That's where we could easily move it down, but they did a good plan, the enemy. They sent the platoon out there at our crossing point. I guess they beat us to the spot. We were moving kind of slow. I guess we went to pick up the speed a little bit there. We were moving kind of slow. They beat us to the crossing point, and they had it covered by machine gun fire, and they were wiping us out. We was trying to get across that road.
What was the toughest decision for the mortars to make?
We fired too early.
And, I mean, it's a tough decision though, because you don't know.
I think
What's that one?
I think the smoke mission, if we'd have fired that to begin with, while he was moving across the road, would have helped out a lot.
Yeah.
Get
And
that
that's
smoke down and then cross right away.
when you guys started communicating. First firing on, you didn't tell him, and you didn't tell him, and you were taking fire. But in real life, you'd probably say, "Hey, Jesus, you know, I'm getting fired on." So I mean, we complain about, "Hey, there's no mortar rounds left," but in real life, there's none left either, until you got on and got the
Resupply.
helicopters, right? What other team skills did you develop during the exercise?
One, of course. We got to be able to communicate. He's got to tell me what he's seeing. He's got to tell me what he's seeing.
He came up with designate the buildings 1, 2, 3
Right.
on the fly as a communication technique. And I was like, and it's not come up with ways to communicate with all your buds, just like the sergeant did. He did a good job. Hey, building 2 is the one that's tracking us right now. I thought that was very well done. The who does the platoon commander control?
It's a squad leader.
Did you exclusively control squads the entire time?
I tried to. I tried. You know, but sometimes there's a frustration thing going there where they're not moving.
And some of that's probably the simulation too,
Right,
because
right.
you know more about the simulation than the devil dogs. But it's another technique of how you control people. Did you feel at any time that you were being over-controlled by
He
the...
just gained that much.
Understood, and that's
So
part of the
it's-
parcel.
Yeah, he knows the ins and outs. I'll just highlight everything, do this, do
Right.
that. So he knows how to move them faster, and
Right.
that's what he was trying to.
Correct.
the main-
And over time, that would come...
How many can he fire on? Squad, depending on what the target is.
You had 3 teams, though, but I mean, you could fire 3 different places at
Three
once,
places,
right?
sir, on-
Or you can fire all at once. Did you have any measures of effectiveness on which was a better way to do it? Because focusing all the fires, sort of like when mortars fire, generally works really well. Target 11, you have target 12. And the guy doesn't tell you to fire on target 13, or both of you guys fire on target 14. And then when you go do blank fire, you don't have to designate targets. Why? Because it's blank and no one gives a rat's butt. But in real life, focusing the fire of people is the job of the platoon commander, is the job of the squad leader. Everyone kill that target. Because Henderson over on the right flank, he's swinging off to the right, shooting some sniper on the rooftop that he's already decided is meaningless. So focusing the fire is a skill that this actually allows you to do. You communicate among yourselves. What's the most important threat? Where should we fire? And a couple times you did a good job putting smoke to help him move, which is, again, we talk about combined arms, but it's hard to do in real life because everyone gets excited about you're doing one thing, he's doing something different. They're looking at different threats coming. And I saw that too. I mean, did you feel that as well?
Yes.
Guys going off in their own program.
Yes, sir.
What's a good technique to avoid that?
Well, first of all, make sure if they do run off on their own, I just have to pull them back under the fold, so to speak.
Probably kindergartners are self-learning too, right? But at least we know adults are self-learning. They want goals. People meet goals. I mean, heck, guys go in the Marine Corps because they have a goal in their head, right? We don't want to bang that out of them. We want to encourage it. Good coach sets a goal and lets the students move toward it. Hey, gents, I want you all to be able to do X. We're going to work on this. What if is a good open-ended question. You might know the right answer. You're the facilitator. You have a whole bunch of opinions. I have a huge problem, gentlemen, holding back my opinions when you're doing this coaching thing. Why? Well, Jesus, I can tell them what to do in a heartbeat. But that's just what McBreen thinks. What I really want to do is make sure Henderson tells me what he thinks. So you don't want to feed Henderson, which is what we call in what, fire hose technique in the Marine Corps? Everyone's familiar with it. Guy stands up and talks the whole time. No one ever talks, like I'm doing right now, right? What if is a good open-ended question. How would you do this differently? What was important? You might know what was important. Get Henderson to say it to you. That way, yeah, geez, I didn't realize that. You make him a self-learner. Avoid grilling the guy. You've seen this too, especially with weapons, things that are easily measured. Well, that was all screwed up. What is the max range? How fast can I fire? All you're doing is beating the guy up because he screwed things up. Does that encourage him to be a self-learner? And you guys work in schools, you know what I'm talking about. You want to pull the guy out of his depression. Hey, look, Devil Dog, we all make mistakes. I make 1,000 mistakes. What would you do differently? Well, that was a dumb place I put it. I agree with you. You didn't have to tell him. He knows it. So good coaches make sure you're pulling this information out of it. Positive insights, self-diagnosis. A good facilitator encourages discussion. What I talked about at the beginning is an expert has millions of experiences, but each experience is not a single thin sheet of paper. Each experience is like a brick, but it's only a brick, a solid experience, if we deepen it, if we make it peer review, after action, peer contribution, discussion and seminar. That way, instead of just having one wisp of an idea, man, one time I had a machine gun thing, you make it a very thick, a very solid experience. So by the end of the month, instead of having just a long line of single thin experiences, each experience is thick. You, as a facilitator, make it as enriching as possible. Because like we talked about before, you catch a lot more fly balls than you typically make combat decisions. And we need to make every single decision as enriched as possible.